Hello again. Today we're going to tie a pheasant tail nymph. And this one I tie for the river. It's got a tungsten bead on it, and sometimes I'll even add lead onto the shank as well as a tungsten bead if I need a fly to get down deep really quickly. I use these almost exclusively in a size 14, although this is a 12 just to make it easier to see on the video. Thread. Uni 80 in black. I'm just going to pop a bit of wax on it to help it grip the shank as I start the thread. And we will start the thread behind that bead, and in touching turns we're going to run the thread down until I get pretty much level with the barb. Now I'm going to take some pheasant tail fibre. I'm going to pull them 90 degrees from the stem, which will line, if I can do this to show you, which will line the tips up, and I want about, I don't know, half a dozen fibres-ish, something like that. I don't count. You know, as far as I know, I don't think fish can count either. So they're not going to look at it and say, oh, there's too many tails on that, I'm not eating that. Tail length, I like my tails to be the whole length of the hook. And we're just going to come in, catch it on the side, allow thread to roll it to the top of the hook. Have a look. I'm happy with that. I'll do another one to lock it in. I'll pull these fibres back and I'll run it up. I'll run the thread up, sorry, just caught the hook point there. Can you see that? You see where it's all frayed, and you've just got to be careful of that because you will break threads. Normally, if you snap a thread, it is because you've hit the hook point and you've just nicked it. Obviously, these small hooks are incredibly sharp. Now, copper wire in a medium. I'm going to poke the end into the bead just to steady it for me while I catch it. And now I'm going to run it down on my side. I'm doing this all the way to where the tail starts. And I'm going to run it all the way back up. Now, pheasant tail fibre can be a little bit brittle, a little bit weak. So I'm going to wind this towards myself, the opposite way to I wind the thread. When you have enough, I'm just going to bring my thread back to meet this. Come on, there we go. When you get enough, follow it up with the thread, throw the thread over, and now we catch. So I'm crossing the fibre and I'm doing a turn on the hook. Then I'm crossing the fibre, turn on the hook, crossing the fibre, couple of turns. It will lock it in. Then I'm just going to trim this away nice and neatly, and then I'm going to wind my copper the normal way that I wind my thread. And doing it this way, you will, I think, make the thread, make the fly stronger. So 90 degree bend into that copper wire as we normally do, catch it in nice and tight, a few turns in front, and then as usual with wire, we'll just wiggle it and bend it and twirl it and it will come off. Don't use just nice expensive fly tying scissors to cut wire because you'll just ruin them. So back to the pheasant tail. I want about a dozen fibres this time. We're going to pull them 90 degrees from the stem to line the tips up. We're going to rip them off. We're going to come over and we're going to pull them back till they're about a body length. And then we're going to come back with the thread to the start of the body. And there is basically your thorax cover and your legs. Now this is where traditionally they use peacock herl. I don't use peacock herl anymore because I've found it doesn't really last long enough. You know, especially sort of brown trout, they do have some big old teeth on them and they can wreck it very quickly. So I basically have made a dubbing from a few different blends and some peacock coloured kind of glister flash to look like peacock herl. And I haven't noticed any difference in the way it fishes or the way it catches fish, but I have noticed a difference in how long it lasts. And believe me, with this dubbing, it lasts a lot longer. You could use a seal's fur mixed with a bit of flash, or you could just stick with the traditional peacock herl. Now, once you've wound all your dubbing, I'm going to pull the legs back and I'm going to take my thread, do a couple of turns behind the bead in front of the legs. Now I'm going to part the legs. I normally use my dubbing needle or my fingers to do this till they're about 50-50. I'm going to press them down. I'm going to just double check. I want a few more over here actually. There we go. I'm going to bring my thorax cover over, so that's what I've got. Then I'm going to run my fingers down the fibre, pinching the legs backwards, catching the thorax cover as you go. Can you see a couple of those fibres broke on me there? That's how fickle and weak it can be. A couple of turns to lock it all in, hold everything back, a couple of turns again, come in with your scissors, minding your legs, cut it off. Now we're going to take my varnish, and as usual on these flies I'm going to varnish the thread. You're going to take your whip finish tool. We're going to mind your legs out of the way. We're going to come in 1, 2, 3, 4. We're just going to take that off, come back down. There we go. Tighten her up. You can see I'm bending the shank of the hook there, so that's nice and tight. And we can either trim or snap our thread away. Any really long fibres, like silly long, I'm just going to get rid of in the dubbing like that. And then I'm going to come in with my little pipey cleaner thingy. Give it a bit of a brush, get some more of them legs out, and there we have it. One last thing I do is just to protect the thorax cover a bit. I just put a bit of varnish on the thorax cover. Oh, not that much. See that big drip then? I tend to put it on my dubbing needle because I can get it on there more accurate. There we go. Just a little bit. Just toughens it up. And there we have it. My version of a pheasant tail nymph, which isn't a million miles away from any other version really. You don't have to use a tungsten bead, of course you don't. You can just have it without that. And in fact, when I'm fishing the lakes, I won't have the bead on it, but it all depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I do, but there we have it. Sorry about me waffling as usual. Hopefully I'll get better at doing these the more I do, but there we go, the pheasant tail nymph. Fantastic fly.